This nation was founded on the principle that all men are created equal.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.
That all men
are
created equal.
I'll tell you what freedom is to me. No fear. I mean, really, no fear.
Created equal.
Welcome to Created Equal. I'm Stephen Henderson at WDET in Detroit. I'm in the studio with the show's producer, Carrie Jr. II. What do we have on tap today, Carrie?
Good morning, Stephen. You kind of stole some of my thunder there at the beginning, at the top of the hour on the billboard. You kind of already went through everything we need to get through.
I already said everything.
Yeah,
right?
I already did, but I'll go ahead and rehash it for the folks who are tuning in at this moment. But yeah, so as we know, and as we've heard for the last few years, the city, we know the history of the I-375 freeway. I-375 is a sunken freeway near east side of downtown Detroit. It was built through a few black neighborhoods and businesses. It displaced many black residents. And now the city has been trying to reconstruct that freeway, to remove that freeway. And so the MDOT has been created a multi-year plan called the I-375 Reconnecting Communities project. And their idea is to eliminate that sunken freeway and replace it with a 6-lane street-level boulevard. The design phase is not complete, but they have been fielding public comments, and what they've been hearing so far from the residents that live nearby is that they're not completely satisfied with the plans.
Yeah, I don't think anybody who's seen what they're planning is satisfied. And last year we did a series of shows on Detroit Today, taking a look at those plans and talking about how much they come up short, really. And I don't think there's another way to describe that. This is a real opportunity for the city and the state to fix some things that went wrong in the past and to kind of cast a future that is a little more hopeful about the communities that surround I-375. And right now we're on track to blow that opportunity. I mean, I think that's really clear. And so now we've got this new coalition of voices in the neighborhood around who are standing up and saying, hold on a second, maybe we could do this better.
I mean, that's part of the question too, right? Like, this is a construction project that we know has a deep history that folks from the city all think back to it and say, okay, this was something that was done to a community. How do we repay that? And this is a transportation project, which is an interesting field to have this conversation on, but it's something that we're talking about now. And I'm not going to go too long on it because I know you've got a pretty full room over there of folks who can speak to this much better than I can.
Yes, there's a crowded studio this morning, and starting with Malachi Barrett, who's a reporter for BridgeDetroit. He covers city government. He wrote a recent story about the residents around the I-375 project who are speaking up and talking about what they would like to see that's not part of the plans. Malachi, welcome back to the studio. Good morning. Also with us are two members of the ReThink I-375 Coalition that is opposing this current design from MDOT for the rethink of I-375. We've got Carl Bentley with us. Hey, Carl.
Good morning. How are you, Stephen?
Also with us is Olga Stella.
Good morning, Stephen.
Yes, it's great to have all three of you here. All right, I'm going to start with you, Malachi. You have been following this closely, writing about it. Give us a quick breakdown of what the current plans look like and what the goals are that the state and the city say are for this project.
So the plan right now is more planning. We are still, MDOT says we are still early in this design process, although the conversations around this project have been ongoing for about a decade now. They took a kind of a pause at the end of last year to go back and redo a traffic study for 375 into downtown. After the pandemic, there were concerns that, due to the drop in office workers and a lot of the kind of changes in driving habits, that roadway was not being used as much as back in 2017 when the previous study was done. And so MDOT actually found that peak traffic volumes on 375 dropped about 20%, which helped them feel more comfortable in reducing the number of lanes from 9, which was a big exclamation point for people that were kind of concerned about how that would actually interact with the public's ability to be connected to downtown down to 6. I don't know that reduction of the lanes addresses all of the concerns that people have, but MDOT has said that they are starting what they call a progressive design process. They're hiring a firm to continue to do public feedback, and the kind of headline for this progressive design process, the intent is that residents will have the ability to suggest changes well into 2026. Even after some of the initial construction starts, they're promising that people will have the ability to influence the design decisions that will still be coming. Now, at the same time, the city is beginning to embark on its framework planning process, which is really aimed at zoning and kind of land use for some 30 acres that will be opened up along the east side of the highway. When they raise this into a boulevard, it's going to create a long vertical tract of land basically going from Gratiot all the way down to Jefferson. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of questions about what does this do? I mean, this is a roadway project, but it's also really a development project in that extent. And so that framework process will look at zoning, which determines what kind of uses can happen on that land. There's also been indications that there will be some kind of effort to honor or recognize the history of the Black Bottom community that was destroyed as a result of urban planning projects that kind of ended with this highway cutting through. What that exactly looks like, we don't know. Some folks have said that this is an opportunity for reparations for business owners and people that were displaced as a result of all of that. We don't really have a clear idea of what exactly that will look like, but the Kresge Foundation is partnering with the Downtown Detroit Partnership to host what they're calling reparative roundtable sessions in these kind of like smaller group meetings with stakeholders to decide some of that. They will be putting recommendations forward within the next couple of months to MDOT. And then also there's a lot of questions around the business community, how this construction is going to impact the east end of downtown and Greektown, and how disruptive will this long construction project be, because we're looking at a possible start date in 2025, ending in 2028. So there's going to be a couple of years of disruption there. And how does that affect people in the area? Is that going to create more truck traffic and dust pollution and all of that?
Yeah. So is it fair to say that after a long period of seeming to just kind of barrel ahead and do what it wanted to do with this, that MDOT and the city to some extent, to the extent that they're involved, are now more open, I guess, to the idea that they've got to listen to people who live in the community, and that the goals of this project need to be broader than just, well, we're going to get rid of one road and replace it with another. Is this a turning point, I guess, in all of this?
I think MDOT has been kind of forced to reckon with these concerns from residents, because they've really leveraged their collective voice in a way that was not really the case when this began. And enough time has passed now where residents have been able to organize and get visibility around their concerns, a lot of which are things that we've kind of been hearing for the last several years. But what seems different in this case is that there's actually some more, I think leverage is probably the right word, that's being levied against MDOT to kind of push them. And I think MDOT has been saying kind of the right things when I have interviewed them about this, so that they are open to having conversations. But, I don't think people have been happy with the way that feedback has been, or those engagement sessions have been taking place. And some people feel left out of the conversation or left out of the loop when it comes to conversations. So I think that is, there's a potential for that to change. We're going to have to see what actually happens moving forward, but there's been commitments to improve the engagement process.
Yeah. This is Created Equal from WDET in Detroit. I'm Stephen Henderson, and I'm talking with Malachi Barrett, who's a reporter for BridgeDetroit, covers city government. I also have two members of the ReThink I-375 Coalition that opposes the current design plans for the big MDOT project on the east side of downtown Detroit. With us, Olga Stella and Carl Bentley are here to talk about the issues they have with the project. We want to hear from you, our listeners, as well today. Give us a call. Let us know if you favor replacing I-375 with a road, whether that should be a big road or a small road. Also, can a roads and infrastructure project also right some wrongs of the past? How do you leverage that brick and mortar side of the change to make community change and fix things that went wrong? a long time ago. Are we blowing the opportunity to do that if we just go ahead and rebuild the road? Give us a call at 313-577-1019. That's the number here on the phones. That's 313-577-1019. You can also go to Twitter and #CreateItEqual or at WDET, and we can include you in the conversation that way. Okay, I want to get to the two members of this coalition and give them a chance to talk about what the problems are. Olga, Stella, I'll start with you.
Sure.
Tell me how this coalition came together. This is kind of late in the process. This has been going on for a while, but I imagine that it's the shortcomings that we've seen in the process that has you and other people raising your hands and saying, "Hold on a second."
Yeah. So the coalition's really been the product of well over a year and a half of residents and small business owners and other concerned citizens trying to impact the process and not gaining any traction in doing so. So while we're kind of coming out and starting to be a little bit more vocal, this has been building for some time.
The frustration has been building, right?
Yeah, it has, because both with the local advisory council that MDOT has pulled together, where concerns have been raised, really from the first meeting of that council in 2023 to Senator Stephanie Chang's town hall in November, where well over 150. I don't think there was a single person in that room that had something good to say about this project. And so, it has been bubbling. People have come to MDOT's meetings in the summertime, shared their concerns, and have not seen that those concerns reflected back. So this winter, a number of us, and Carl and I are just two of many people who've been helping to organize. We started to meet. We wanted to hear from each other, because in MDOT's public engagement process, it hasn't been easy to hear from each other. And so that's what we started doing first, was just trying to understand where everybody was coming from. And then we started talking about, well, what can we actually do? This project is too important to our community to just continue to do the same thing, to go and raise our concerns at MDOT's meetings and still not see any action take place.
Yeah. Let's talk about the actual shortcomings that you have, the things that you think just are not getting done. Carl, do you want to go ahead and do that?
Sure. First, the project is bigger than just the I-375, interchange. It impacts the entire city of Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the east side entrance into downtown,
mm-hmm.
and you have all your communities that's east of downtown, the Grosse Points and whatnot. They use that access, into downtown. And, the fact of the matter is that is a thriving community that, services the lower east side of the city. And when you go in to rip it up, and for the next 3 to 5 years, that's going to have a tremendous impact into the new Hudson building, for
Sure.
example,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And so on and so forth. So looking at how do we, not only engage the community right there, okay, but how do we have a surefire plan, okay, that allows us to continue to have the engagement that we're having with the growth of the city, and not be as disruptive as it appears to be today.
Yeah. And what about the reparative side of this, which MDOT and the governor have been very vocal about and have said from the beginning that was one of the goals. And then you look at the plans that they've come up with, and there's not a lot there that speaks to that.
Yeah, I mean, at the last local advisory council meeting, they referenced MDOT's reparative roundtable. MDOT referenced the Kresge Foundation's
Mm-hmm.
reparative roundtable. Mm-hmm. When these concerns have been raised at prior LAC meetings, much like most of the concerns that are raised, we're told we'll handle that later in the process. But the reality is we're running out of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we keep hearing, that this framework project will outline, the approaches to show how the reparations piece are going to be, addressed. I have a huge concern with that. I mean, those are just words, okay? And it doesn't really give, a lot of comfort that you're going to get something, really meaningful for this.
So you two are residents of the neighborhoods around this project. Talk about the other people who are members of this coalition, though. Is it all people who live in the area? Is it also businesses in the area? Is it community associations? Give us a sense of who's involved.
Well, yeah, it's businesses in the area. We have some Eastern Market people. We have some people from the businesses that are in Greektown. I'm not going to, say a name, but the businesses in Greektown are as concerned as they should be, and every neighborhood, you have the Elwyn Park neighborhood, the Brush Park neighborhood, all the way over to the what's the
Indian Village Manor and
Indian
the villages.
Village Manor.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not just that little collection
right
there off Lafayette. It is it's big.
Yeah. Folks from McDougall Hunt, we've been working with Miss D and the 4820711 grassroots Detroiters, and I mean, there's a lot of people. This isn't it's been characterized as the boulevard, and that's what it was maybe in 2017, but it's an interchange project, and it's an interchange that affects everyone who uses I-75 and everyone who goes, anywhere in the vicinity of Brush Park, Eastern Market, downtown, and the Lower East Side.
Right. Yeah. Malachi, what does the city and the state say now about the reparative part of this? I know you've talked with city officials and state officials about it. What's their explanation for where they are with all of that?
I mean, it's really tough to get any concrete details about what the reparative aspect is going to look like. I mean, truly, I don't have anything concrete really that's been committed at this point. There's been conversations around different options. I think historical markers is one thing that's actually come forward. But MDOT has said, this is kind of more the city's responsibility. The city is also leaning on Kresge. It's kind of hard for residents in particular to understand whose responsibility is it to drive the reparative aspect of this, because MDOT traditionally is not really, they don't do this kind of community building piece. They're really focused on road and infrastructure projects. And I think that's part of the shortcoming that people are feeling around this too, is that MDOT as a state agency may not really be equipped to conduct public engagement in the way that people would want. I don't know. I mean, we're going to see pretty soon the report that comes out of these reparative roundtables. But really, when it comes to land use, people want to see some preference given to folks that have a connection to that neighborhood. Either their family live there or they have a direct connection for living. I mean, there's a lot of living residents who live in Black Bottom.
Yeah. We should stop and sort of recap what happened, which was that there were two historically black neighborhoods in that area, Paradise Valley, which was a business and entertainment district, and then Black Bottom, which was where many black families lived. And for a long time, it was the only place in the city that black families could live. They were both destroyed in part by the highway. The highway didn't replace all of it. There were neighborhoods that were built that did the same thing. And there is this big question about how do you repay the people whose homes were destroyed and whose businesses had to move because of that, and that's kind of a key of the project.
I'll just say too that I think there's a lot of folks who just feel like a road project can't restore what was lost, and that it's almost disingenuous to kind of suggest that in the first place.
Yeah. And we've asked, I remember at one of the very first local advisory council meetings in 23, the question was asked, well, are you going to go look for the descendants? Can you find the living residents, the former residents? No, that's out of the scope of this project, was the answer from MDOT. And it's
so frustrating because if you live in the city for 5 minutes, you run into people who lived in that area. It's not like they're hard to find or that they scattered to other cities. They're here. Most of them are still here in our city.
None of this is hard. It just requires focused effort and attention and having the right set of goals and objectives driving the process. If the goals and objectives are to replace an interchange and build a road, then MDOT's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing.
Right.
But if the goals and objectives are to, create a visionary future for the city, to create that reparative future, that you're talking about, Stephen, then you have to do the project in a different way. Yeah. And I think it's just important, given that, they keep telling us how they're running out of time, they have to start construction. These are really important issues. Does not appear to be a concrete way that they're going to be addressed.
Yeah, and if you do it wrong, there's not an easy way to go back and fix it. It took us 60 years to get to the point where we would rethink all of the things that went wrong in the first place.
Right.
If we do it again, I don't know how long it'll be.
Right.
All right. We need to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation with Malachi Barrett of BridgeDetroit and Olga Stella and Carl Bentley of the ReThink I-375 Project Coalition. We will also start to hear from you, the listeners, on the phones and on social. Give us a call. Let us know what you think of the current state of the rethink of I-375 is. Could it be more reparative? Could it be more thoughtful, even from a transportation perspective? Do we need to replace a 6-lane freeway with a 6-lane road? Can we do something else that would be easier to traverse on foot or even on a bike? 313-577-1019 is the number here on the phones. That's 313-577-1019. You can also go to Twitter at WDET or hashtag Created Equal. We'll be right back with more Created Equal. You're listening to Created Equal from WDET in Detroit. I'm Stephen Henderson, and I'm glad you're with us. We're talking today about the I-375 project on the east side of downtown Detroit, which plans to remove that little spur of a highway that comes off of I-75 and ends on Jefferson Avenue and replace it with a road. Of course, that brings up all kinds of other issues. What was there before the freeway? Who was there before the freeway? And whether we can repair the damage that was done to the communities around that freeway by its construction and other kinds of projects like that many years ago here in the city. We want to hear from you about what you know about the I-375 reconstruction project and what you think of the plans that you've seen. Is this the right way to go about this? Is this the way to fix the things that we broke when we built I-375 and destroyed the communities around it through other kinds of redevelopment projects? Is there a better way? Is there enough citizen input into the way that the state and the city have gone about this? Give us a call. 313-577-1019 is the number here on the phones. That's 313-577-1019. You can also go to Twitter and hashtag us or at WDET. We've got three great guests with us to talk about this. Malachi Barrett is a reporter for BridgeDetroit, and he covers city government. He has been writing about the I-375 project. We also have two members of the ReThink I-375 Coalition that opposes the current design plans that MDOT has for the project and is suggesting a more inclusive and thoughtful process. Olga Stella and Carl Bentley are both part of that coalition. I want to start this segment talking about something that I learned about not too long ago when I visited Minneapolis, Minnesota. The city of St. Paul is also thinking about reparations and how to fix the damage that was done by the construction of a highway. And that's been a pretty controversial project in that city. But they also have come up with some really interesting ideas that, I don't know, seem like they might apply here in Detroit. There is a program called the Inheritance Fund in St. Paul. This is a fund that is available to people whose families lived in the neighborhood that was destroyed by the highway. They can get down payment assistance. They can have access to a homeowner rehab program. They're handing out as much as $100,000 per family to buy homes, either in this area or in other areas. In other words, they're starting with the idea of reparation before they get to the idea of what the highway should look like or what the streets should look like. Ironically, the highway they're talking about there in Minnesota is a highway we have here in the city of Detroit as well, I-94, which goes west from here to Minneapolis. But it was just a reminder for me of how troubling and how frustrating the process here has been the whole time. These are not things that anybody has really suggested who's part of the process or the decision-making process here, and yet in Minneapolis, they're much further ahead than we are. It seems often in Detroit, if you look to other communities, they're doing it in a way that makes us envious and somewhat sorrowful, I think. Malachi, when you talk to city and state officials, do they ever even reference this kind of idea or program?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of this is it kind of started, the concept of a boulevard, from my understanding, started with a planning grant that Kresge had gave to DEGC to study the boulevard idea. And so there were kind of talks around 2014 about how removing the freeway and turning it into a boulevard could kind of reconnect parts of downtown to those Lower East Side neighborhoods. And the federal government came in, I guess it would have been like 2 years ago now, with some grant money that is part of a national effort to reconnect communities that have been divided by highways. And so that piece of it has really kind of emerged throughout the process. But I don't know. I mean, the federal kind of Thriving Communities grant was an opportunity to add that element, I think, to this design that maybe initially I don't know. I think that's a complicated. I mean, we're seeing it in motion still, right?
Yeah, we are. I'm not sure where we end up, and I'm not sure at what point the thing turns toward this kind of reparative discussion. I don't think I've heard as part of any of these conversations what you had mentioned about the access to financing and land that has been going on in other parts of the country with these federally backed projects. Mm-hmm. I think if that was brought into the conversation, it might provide more of a, concrete example for things that people are looking for when it comes to the land use. Yeah. But from my understanding, I don't really think that's been part of the conversation so far. And
I've looked at the environmental assessment closely, the one that was conducted and approved in 2021 by the Federal Highway Administration. And all of the restorative justice, anything that relates to Black Bottom, anything that relates to community enhancements, all of the kind of community benefits that are supposed to come out of this to mitigate the potential impacts are all supposed to be funded by the sale of the land. Yet that we don't know how the land is supposed to be sold. MDOT is still trying to figure that out. And when will this land be sold? Yeah. I think we all are conversant in Detroit development. There is a lot of vacant land near downtown that has not yet been developed. Mm-hmm. And I think to ask the residents, the small business owners, and anyone who is impacted by the highway removal, when it happened, to wait for the land to be sold and then for that to fund community benefits, and that is just completely unrealistic. Yeah. And I think for, Carl and I are not experts in restorative justice. We're not traffic engineers. No. We're, we have been talking with our neighbors and with others who are concerned, and what we're asking for is for MDOT, for our elected leaders to take a moment, really think about the impact of this project, and to reform this process that they're using. Yeah. Because we're not pretending like we know exactly how to fix, this freeway design. That is beyond the capacity of any individual resident or business owner.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I just think that they're looking at this from repairing a wrongdoing of, how they built the road to begin with. All right. So they're overlooking the fact that when they did that, they ripped up families, okay, and, took away, a thriving area, and we get a freeway out of it, which I think they need to go back, and that's why we say rethink, okay? It's not a road project. This is a neighborhood transformational project. So let's look at it from that perspective, all right? And then the road becomes a byproduct of it, as opposed to, the what we keep hearing, it's a road project. No, this is a transformative neighborhood project, okay, that we really need to step back and take a look at it from that lens and not look at it from the road project perspective.
Yeah. I want to read a social media comment from James, who says, a cement monument can't replace reparations now owed. He says, solicit residents who were uprooted. My first house was on Maple and Shane, 1951. We're still around. As I said, you can't be in Detroit very long without running into people who lived in this area and were affected by all the things that happened. Let's go to the phones and start today with Jacqueline in Detroit. Jacqueline, welcome to the show.
Good morning. I want to comment on, well, first of all, I called into the Mitch Albom show one time. Mike Duggan was on there, and he had mentioned that that the neighborhood surrounding this project, through town hall meetings, had really gave overwhelming approval of this project. And also, when I was talking to the young man, I let him know, and the guy mentioned that during that time, we as a family, I mean, my cousins, my aunt, 2 aunts and cousins, we all lived together, and we all, got where I shouldn't. It's just my parents was in Black Bottom first. Then they moved down to Hendry and Hastings.
Mm-hmm.
They were displaced there. Then I-75 came along with I-94, and we were displaced again, where we had to move again. I think I was about 4 years old then, but I'm 70 now. But, I just don't like that the mayor is saying one thing, and, and then he strictly says that this is reparations, when he first came out with it. But from what I'm hearing on the radio, there is, it's not even in the paperwork.
Yeah. Jacqueline, I'm glad you called principally because, you're somebody else who lived in this area and remembers it and remembers what happened. I think those voices are really critical right now because they tell us the truth about what happened, and it's important that doesn't get erased in what we're talking about. But I also am curious about this thing that you heard from the mayor about people being in favor of this. Olga and Carl, at the town halls that were held, which they were. I mean, MDOT has held meetings for people to talk. What has been the tenor of what people have said?
So I think it's important to for everyone to understand exactly what kinds of public engagement have taken place. There were town halls in 2017. I honestly don't remember those town halls. Those were about the boulevard. Mm-hmm. So the project at that time was from Gratiot to the river, and it was just the boulevard. The interchange was not affected. In 2018 and 2019, MDOT held meetings with its local advisory council at that time. Carl and I were not members of that local advisory council. Nope. We were not involved. There may have been, we've heard that there were other community meetings, neighborhood meetings. There's nothing in the public record about public town halls, those kinds of meetings. If people in our community were invited, that's great, but that kind of engagement in small groups does not replace widespread engagement. Yeah. In 2019, they added in the interchange project sometime in 2018, 2019. Those were shared with the local advisory council at that time. The first time that was shared publicly in a widespread way was when they were coming for public comment in 2021. In January of 21, during the pandemic, in a city where we were teaching our children from home, and people were struggling for their lives.
Yeah.
So, it's hard. I'm sure some people were engaged, but when we talk to our neighbors, when we show up to the public engagement that's happening now, people are either shocked and confused that the project is taking place or have serious concerns. And the kinds of concerns that we're hearing from our neighbors and small businesses are about pedestrian safety, about public safety, access to the Detroit Medical Center, which will be severely impacted by the design of this project. What's going to happen to this land? Tell us more about what this Reconnecting Communities project means. Those are how will my small business be affected? Those are the concerns that we continue to hear. So it very well may be that this engagement took place,
Right.
but the concerns were not addressed.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the things that, I've pointed out several times, I think, to the officials is that you collect this data, you hear these comments, you hear these questions, and you get no answers. I mean, there's nothing that's been distilled to say that, public safety will be addressed this way, right? We were on a call a couple weeks ago, and one of the officials said that, well, no one walks from this area to Easton Market. And that was, I was floored by that comment. That just tells me this person's never even been in the area to understand that, the majority of the people will take that walk, So, it's just things like that the information is certainly, those forums probably occurred, information was taken, and then it was put on a shelf somewhere.
Yeah. Again, Jacqueline, really appreciate your call and that important info about your history here in the city. Let's go next to Peter in Detroit. Peter, what's on your mind?
Good morning. Hey, love the new show, and especially that new Sam Bobian theme song. Love
you
it.
like the music?
Oh, yeah. Stephen, here's what my concern is number one, I think they're rushing it. And
right.
The other thing is that they're being so uncreative. And, if you're going to do a big project, look to where things like this have been done other places and learn from other people's mistakes and learn from successes. In Washington, D.C., and in a lot of other cities, there is a highway that runs right underneath the mall because they weren't going to plow through the mall. They left the mall up there. They tunneled under. Well, 375 is already in a big ditch. Why not build over the top of that and put a community and stores and everything else over the top of that? You still keep 375. The concerns for how are people going to get downtown, that's gone, and you can build a community up there that is what people want.
Yeah.
That is what engage them and find out what is it that we want to do. But you can have both things if you're creative enough.
Yeah, Peter, I love that you called and suggested that, because one of my questions from the beginning is why would you want to get rid of the freeway and replace it with a road that acts like a freeway? Right? What's the difference? And also, if you put 6 or 9 lanes at grade instead of sunken, now you're asking people to cross that if they want to get from the neighborhoods on the east side into downtown. I don't walk across Woodward in most places because it's too wide. I don't walk across Gratiot, even at a light, because it's too wide and it seems dangerous. You would create that same phenomenon there. And so why not think about getting rid of the freeway and creating a community with, 1 or 2 lane streets and housing and shopping and all those things. And that was never seemed to be on the boards here. It never seemed to be part of what they were considering. And I love the idea of tunneling as well, right? The Big Dig in Boston is an example of that, although that was a kind of fraught project. Maybe we don't want to idolize that one too much, but the idea is what's important. And I wonder, Malachi, if it is too late to think of it in those terms.
I think the MDOT has said they're pretty committed to the boulevard design. The details of it could be tweaked, but the concept of raising it and turning it into a boulevard is pretty set in stone. I think largely because they've talked about safety issues with the curve that comes into downtown, and also the the expense and the difficulty of maintaining those bridges that cross over. I think they would like to not have to worry about that asset anymore. Even though it does provide some separation, it's a little bit easier to cross that because, while you are kind of elevated and it feels maybe less safe, you're not actually crossing the traffic in the same way that you would if you're at the ground level.
Right.
It's interesting to talk about the capping idea because DDOT actually was, or the U.S. Department of Transportation has a grant that was provided to the Downtown Detroit Partnership for capping I-75 a little bit north there. And the idea was
near Woodward, right?
Yeah, you create kind of a tunnel that makes a better connection to downtown and like Brush Park in the Midtown area, and maybe you turn that into a park or you allow housing or businesses there. So that's something that is kind of in early conversations in a couple miles away from this project. But it doesn't seem like there's the same kind of potential for a kind of covering of I-375.
Yeah. Okay, Olga Stella and Carl Bentley, I know you guys have to run to other obligations, but I want to thank both of you for being here and sharing your concerns about this project. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to take a quick break. We're going to keep Malachi Barrett and get to more of your phone calls and social media comments. We'll also hear from another member of the ReThink I-375 Coalition about his concerns. We'll be right back with more Created Equal. This is Created Equal, and we're talking about the I-375 ReThink project on the east side of downtown Detroit. Can we think bigger about it? Can we make it more reparative than what it is to the communities that were destroyed in part by the highway and in part by other development in that part of the city that displaced two historically black neighborhoods? We want to hear from you as well on the phones and on social. 313-577-1019 is the number, and you can go to Twitter and hashtag Detroit Today. We've got Malachi Barrett with us. He's a reporter for BridgeDetroit. He covers city government and has been writing about this project. I also want to get to the phones here and hear from another member of the ReThink I-375 Coalition, which has recently issued a number of concerns that they have about all of this. J. Gregory Love is chairman of the Community Advisory Council for District 5 here in the city of Detroit. He's also president of the Indian Village Condominium Association. Gregory, welcome to Created Equal.
Thank you so very much, Stephen, and thank you for hosting this very, very important topic.
Sure. So tell me what your concerns are and what you hope to have happen from the coalition kind of raising its voice at this time and saying, let's think this out a little differently.
Absolutely. I'll try to use the Reader's Digest version and keep it short. I hearken back to my dad's oldest sister, my aunt. She was a nurse and lived in Black Bottom, and she actually worked at the Burton Mercy Hospital, where my grandmother died at, all in that area, okay? And so that spirit is there. I've been in Detroit all of my life. Now, there's two things that I brought up as the former executive deputy fire commissioner for 25 years with the department. I knew right away that an artery was going to be severed by this project. That artery is Jefferson East. Going into downtown, all the ambulances use that, what we call Chase, to get to 375 and get off at Mac when they come off of 75. That is the shortest distance between 2 points, straight line. Now you're telling us at the last LAC meeting that we didn't plan for that, but we're going to fix it later. You can't fix that later. It'll be too late. So now you're going to ask the folks that are in the senior citizen high-rises, which is the highest density in the city of Detroit, all along the Jefferson corridor. They can't get to the DMC in a timely manner. The last article by MDOT, where they were quoted, the time study indicated from Lafayette Park, 6 to 9 minutes, and any event that there's an event down there, which you and I know oftentimes they are. How in the world are you going to route those folks through and into the DMC? They're saying now Brush Park. Are you kidding me? Brush Park is already too tight. So what I'm saying to you, Stephen, and the listeners, between the Lower East Side and that I-375, you are creating a death trap. There are going to be minutes, up to 14 minutes, 15 minutes, to get to the DMC from, let's just say, I don't know, Gordon's Food.
Well, East or just East Jefferson. So Gregory, would you keep the highway? I think that's an interesting perspective.
Well, one of your callers made a very good point, and I heard it in one of the meetings where there was consideration of capping it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that if you capped it, you could save many, many dollars. But let me just say about that. That's what I would do. I would cap it. Don't take it out, cap it. That's hogwash that the curve is creating too many accidents. Never heard that in my life. And the fire department, I don't ever remember getting a run where there was an accident in that curve. Come on. Now, but listen at this. If you take and you cap that and you say, well, they're telling you that we're doing this because of the restorative justice, which is a misnomer, certainly a misnomer. But I think the MDOT, which is a road construction operation,
right,
they built all the bridges, repaired every bridge between I-275 and Telegraph in less than 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me you can't repair the few bridges that are over that area?
What do we have, 3? Yeah. Gregory, I'm really glad you called because, again, the people who live in that area and the people who have history in that area, I think, are the ones who have the most to say about it. And again, Malachi, that's a perspective I haven't heard from the state or the city kind of reflected in the thinking behind what they've come up with.
Yeah, I think, for a project that's been about a decade old, we've heard a lot of folks wonder why there's not more kind of aspiration or imagination in this idea. I think it's interesting to kind of think about how this affects emergency runs. Even a minute or two could make a difference. The MDOT has talked about traffic calming along 375 as well to address some of the concerns about pedestrian safety and cyclists who are crossing into downtown. And, they said that the boulevard would have a 30 mile per hour speed limit, that the lights would be no turn on red, allowing for a little bit more comfortability when you're crossing there. You don't have to worry about cars making that right turn into downtown. But, I think it's going to take a long time for people to get used to that. Certainly right now people are not going 30 miles an hour on 375. They're not going the speed limit, even if I think it's like 40 or 50 over there. People are going much faster than that.
We always do on the freeways here.
Right, and so do I. But, I think it's people's behavior and driving habits along this are a whole other piece that is going to take time to adjust to the new roadway. And, for people that are concerned about whether safety is a priority, I think that's an important piece to consider too.
Yeah. I want to take one more call quickly. Harriet Saperstein is one of the more renowned planners here in the city of Detroit. Harriet, what's on your mind today?
Good Lord, I'm concerned with the fact that GM just announced that it's leaving Rensen, and the justification for the expressway extension was always to get to 275. Mm-hmm. It never cared about the east and west, either the downtown or the people. It just counted on that. So somehow the planning does have to change, because it's not only the back end, the connection to Eastern Market, the connection to the people that were there before and never got reparations, the connection to the integrated neighborhoods that live nearby and the businesses. And I don't hear anything from certainly the government officials trying to deal with that. I compliment Olga and the group she's put together, because we've got to do something better than the plans that are there now. It's just going to hurt everything that we're trying to do in terms of bringing people back to the city in an integrated, economically and racially neighborhood, as we have tried to do in the past.
Yeah. Harriet, I really appreciate your call and your voice. As I said, you're somebody who has been involved in planning in the city most of my life here in the city of Detroit. So I really respect your your opinion here. Okay, Malachi Barrett, great to have you here for this conversation. Thanks so much for joining us on Created Equal.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Also, if you want to know more about this issue, you can go back and listen to our Reckoning 375 series that we did on Detroit Today last fall here on WDET. That is going to do it for us today. Created Equal is produced by Kerry Jr. II and David Lyons. Our engineer is Nate Bender. Audio editing is by Connor Anderson, and music is by Sam Bobian. You can listen to recent episodes on WDET.org, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast, where you can leave us a rating or a review. Created Equal is a production of WDET, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University.